welcome to the Stronger Than My Excuses show, suicide prevention and breaking the stigma. I'm Greg Van Borsen from GVB Mind Warriors, and I'll be your host for today. Today we're discussing suicide prevention with a focus on community attitudes and breaking stigma. With me today is co-host Alan Stevens, International Profiling and Communication Specialist. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you for having me.
Our aim is to find out what stops so many people from taking action. On resolving this topic, we want to give you some takeaways and some actions. All five of us here will be responding to the questions that we will be asking. Alan, can you please introduce yourself and introduce the three special guests for the day?
As I say, I'm Alan Stevens, International Profile and Communication Specialist. And today with me, I'd like to welcome Sam Broker, who is the Performance Coach, Hypnosis and Speaker for Happy You HQ. Also, Elizabeth Eleanor, Energy Healer and Spiritual Mentor at Spiritual Warriors. And John Hope, Life and Business Strategist and Advocate for Mental Health. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks, Alan.
Hey.
Thanks, Alan.
Right, just before we ask the first question, I'd like to acknowledge thank our special sponsors and supporters that you're going to see on your screen. And also thanks to the Republic Cafe at Ettalong Beach. We almost got there. The virtual venue for today, generously offered by them. So please, we're unable to film there today at the location, but due to our healthcare concerns and the rest of it, we've all had to stay remote. But if you get a chance, drop in there, say good day, have a coffee. Every show is not about making excuses. It's how we can support the prevention of suicide by taking action. For that reason, every show will wrap up with action tools.
And please ask questions as you're watching on any of the social media, and we will answer as quickly as possible.
Let's start with why. Why is there such a stigma associated with suicide prevention and even discussing suicide at all? Alan, can I start with you? What has been your personal experience and what have you seen or heard in regards to the stigma happening to other people that you know?
Yeah, the problem is both internal and external, in that the people who are feeling suicide don't want people to know about it because there's a stigma around it. Men were always the protectors. So to be able to protect people, you've got to be your best. And if we don't feel that we're our best, we don't want people to know about that. At the same time, on the outside, people, if that's the way we feel about things out in that situation, we're also going to look at other people when we're not in that situation, those that are feeling the stress of the pressures, and look at them and go, well, are you really there? And this is the problem because everyone's looking at each other, and it's the old stigmas that were brought together through time.
I think one of the major issues that people have with regards to talking about suicide and the prevention of it is the fact that with mental health, just even the word mental health, when we talk about it, there's such a stigma associated with it being a weakness. And I think people are so afraid of actually opening up and speaking about it because they think that people think that they're weak and that there's actually a really big problem. The loss of connection is huge. We're all sitting here on screens today, and this is a perfect example. We're talking about isolation, and that's what people do when they're doing a bit of depression or anxiety, is that they'll self-isolate. So I think that, it's about breaking down the thought process and taking it from it's a sign of weakness to it's a sign of strength to actually fess up and chat about how you're feeling to the people that you love.
I totally agree with Alan and Sam. One of the things that I feel is a challenge is that the roles that we used to have been totally blurred. So men have lost their understanding of who they are, and that warrior that they used to be, the provider and the protector of the family, and women are now trying to do absolutely everything. So while they're struggling to provide for the family or look after the family, they're also trying to be equal in their role as, with the men. And so for me, I feel that society in general has lost its understanding of how the rhythm of men and women actually are in the first place. And so everyone's under pressure and no one really wants to talk about that pressure because, as Sam said, it's a form of weakness in society that we are weak if we talk about our challenges and our problems instead of actually allowing ourselves to go, hey, we're not perfect.
Yeah, my experience with this sort of stuff is I was a policeman for 20 years. I've been to countless suicides. You have to, every death that happens outside a hospital has to be reported to the coroner by police. You know, it's a pretty passionate subject for me, and it's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because I've lost a lot of friends to it. And the problem is that when people get to a point where they do that, they're in a state of despair. Now, the opposite of despair is hope. So basically, hope's gone. One of the things, I did Alan's course. Alan's a profiler, and one of the things that you have is, like, your mental health comes from your emotions. So your emotions put you in despair. And you can actually tell if someone's in that state because you might need to jump in, Alan, but it's where the coloured part of your eye, if you can see white either below or above, then they're in it. All their adrenal glands have come in, and it reduces the size of your actual eyeball,
The iris.
Coloured part, the iris. And then if you can see white above and below the eye, then they're suicidal because their emotions are at that point. So for me, it's all about being aware of your emotions and also talking. Like, I know we're going to talk about actions a little bit later, you know, the things that I do, but yeah. So that's my answer to that particular question, and it is something I'm pretty passionate about.
Mate, much like you, John, I mean, I've been through 12 very close suicides, family members and friends, colleagues, all the rest. And from my perspective, a lot of it comes from era as well. When my auntie took her life, she'd been depressed for a long time, had not told a soul because it was shameful. And I think the more we can start getting it out there, but I'm a big believer in action because I think a lot of depression can be solved through action. And one of the hardest things to do, and we've always called it the laziness of depression, because it makes you've lost everything. You've lost energy, you've lost hope, and pain without hope is just complete despair, as you were saying. And so one of the biggest things, I'm not a fan of guys getting together and chatting and just sitting down and chatting. I believe action needs to happen. So get people out, get them physical, get them moving, and then earn the discussion, earn the chat. Because when the endorphins are flowing, you start feeling better. There's a little bit of hope ignited, and you sit down, you talk about it then with positive outcomes. And then we're on the path to a solution with things for people. Give them that step-by-step encouragement. And I've done a lot of work over the years with Mates in Construction, with Nat Conduit, all the biggest groups over there. And it's funny, it's very similar way of thinking that's starting to happen in a lot of these places where they're realizing that action has to coincide. And it does. Motion builds on emotion and starts helping you move forward. It's as most of it, we've probably been through this stuff ourselves to some point and have a great understanding of it in that respect. And people with the ability to fight back, who have actually come back and fought their way through again, are incredible, incredible people to have on board and talk with, because that people that, when I speak on it, people that have never told anybody, I treat it like the baby being born moment. People that have never told a single soul about it, who then have heard someone's story, who can then come to you and go, you know what, I felt like that, I understand, but I've never told anybody. You know, that is the first step. I think one of the things we need to mesh together is experts in the field of medical, which are, you know, from the psychotherapists, the psychologists, the doctors, with lived experience people and all the rest, bring together to make this sort of homogenous sort of growth to how we solve this, because the stories lead to people talking lead to leading you hand to hand to help. You don't hand someone off to help, you take them by the hand and lead them to the help. That's my belief anyway. So in regards to this, what outcomes are we looking for? We'll come up with some actions shortly, but what are we actually trying to achieve with the discussion? So what outcomes would be ideal? Sam, I'd like you to start this one.
Look, I think the outcome that would be ideal, Greg, is that people actually start connecting with one another and talking about this. You know, you mentioned movement, which I'm a huge believer in, and I think that, you know, mental health, the whole conversation and dialogue around it has come down to, if I'm depressed or anxious, I must need medication, for instance, and then there's a big stigma associated with that. But I truly believe, and there's a lot of very clever people, way cleverer than me, that talk about, you know, exercise as being one of the number one things that can get people out of a state and changing your physiology, you know. So putting a good song on and just getting up and breathing and moving your body, if we could just get that message out there to people that are struggling, that one simple thing, which is free, would profoundly change the mental health industry. You know, I really believe that.
Yeah, and simply getting back to nature, I think we've been so caught up in this world that we've made for ourselves, we've forgotten the world that was created for us. And if we got out in nature, got our shoes off and just got back into basic things again, and it's been clinically proven that actually changes your makeup and improves your life. So yeah, small things make massive differences.
Yep, agreed.
One of the things that I truly believe in is actually way back before we get to that point where we're feeling suicidal, and this is the individual, and this is one of the challenges, is people may be hearing this and think of everyone as a collective, but this is about you. This is the person that we're talking to. And actually, before you're getting to that point where you're having suicidal tendencies or thoughts and not wanting to be on the planet anymore, is actually, I'm not feeling okay, I've got some anxiety, or I've got depression, or I've got, I'm actually just feeling low in some way, then get some help then. Like, do something around, I'm not feeling the best. So, that's the sort of outcome we really want to look at, is prevention from the very start. Like, if you're not feeling good, then it's not a certain type of person anymore that gets help. It's actually anyone that's not, we live in a society that's very stressful, high pressure, competition, all of those things. And we need to be aware that part of our self-development is to speak to somebody else about how you're feeling, so that you can move forward in a really good, positive way.
We could even go a step further back then, I suppose. If you think about it, we could actually learn, if we have the tendencies, or we know we've got a tendency to slide into depression or slide downwards, if we let people know the steps to pre-build a network of friends you can trust, who you can talk to, and who can reach in and help you. You start putting steps in place, be it music or meditation or other things that can help you slide a little less lower. It might help lots of people. So yeah, spot on.
To
Totally.
find the people that we can trust, we really need to look at changing society's attitude to it in the first place. Understanding why somebody becomes suicidal. I've sat with a lot of men, and usually because I'm able to profile them quickly, I'm able to recognize that something's going on, and in that I can get a conversation going. When they start talking about the shame that they have because they're not meeting their commitments. Because as I said before, it's back to men feeling that they had to be the protectors. And when they get into that state, straight away, I'm talking to somebody who has got this shame about themselves, don't think they're worthy, don't think they're good enough. And as I point out to them, hey, you've got to this stage because you've had such a passion to look after your family and everything else. And it's your strength that's actually made you get into this state of wanting to kill yourself. So in that point, you need to have other people around you. So if everybody understood, because when you're in that state yourself, you're worried about yourself. When you're not in that state and looking at other people, then you've still got that mindset of being weak and everything else. And that's what you project onto other people. So we need to start changing our views outside of it, just general population, to realize that it's not a weakness. It generally comes from somebody taking on too much of a load, and they just didn't know to go and talk to someone because they didn't know who to talk to. Well, if we all learned how to listen and therefore talk to the people after we've listened to them properly, as I was saying, one mouth, two eyes and two ears, use them in that proportion. And when you do that, they can then respond back to you and you can make that connection with them. So it's changing society's views on it to help that person change their view on it.
Just on that really quickly, this is actually for Alan and John really quickly, because John, you've probably had a lot of experience with post-traumatic stress disorder. It's just, okay, so one thing I have a big issue with is all these days we have for suicide prevention. There's the Are You OK days. Okay, it says start the conversation. Now, two things. One thing, I think Are You OK is every day. I don't think it's one day a year. And I also believe that no one's ever told us what to do next. So this is for all of you. What if someone says they're not okay? No one's ever told anybody what the hell to do next. So what do we do next? So who can help me?
Well, I think you've got to take into account medical corporations are businesses. They're the biggest businesses in the world. They're selling, their influence and leadership towards their sale is your health. So it's your main concern. But they don't make money if you're well. They don't make money if you're dead. They make money out of you in between. So you've got to be careful where you go. You get there and you're emotionally upset, because we have emotions, and then they create a chemical release in our body. And we try, and if we're in depression, we try and like reassert it by having alcohol, drugs, even sex, that sort of stuff. It brings out those positive things in your body. But what you need to do, as you said, Greg, is action. Action is so important. I spoke to Brooke Shields in LA, and she's talked about action. She said she suffered severely from postpartum depression, and her biggest thing was she tackled it. She took it. when we're in a fear response, in a stress response, and you're in fight and flight, you're in your fear zone, because we've got two basic emotions, which I spoke to Dr. Phil recently, and he said, we've got one drive. It's like your endocrine system. It releases positive stuff when you're happy, when you're in love, joy, gratefulness, all that sort of stuff. And when you're in fear, it releases bad stuff. And that's the in fight and flight. And it makes you exhausted. It saps you of energy. It's not a good place to be. And we all try to get out. And if you're in that zone, a lot of people self-medicate, like I said, with other things. So for me, it's about being aware. Medical corporations, if you're stressed and you've got an emotional problem, a pill is not going to fix it. If you speak to Steve Illard, or if you have a look at Steve Illard on YouTube, he's done a few TED Talks. He's a neuroscientist and a practicing psychologist. He's a depression researcher, and he says that and Dr. Phil said it as well. While I was in LA, you can treat mental health the same way you can treat an injured knee. It's just your mental health and your physical health are two different things. Medical corporations are your sickness. Is all about being sick. It's not about being well.
Okay, so I think we've already touched on actions. So let's move into that question of actions. Now, understanding that the problem and the outcomes, how do we think we can improve the situation? What do we do to fix this? Let's go to you, Sam. What do you think?
Well, I think it's important to actually ask the people whether there is something environmental going on in their life, because I think sometimes, there's different kinds of depression and anxiety. Someone's family member could have just died. Their Facebook account could have just been hacked and deleted, like mine was yesterday. And certain things like that, external factors, right, can actually cause someone to spiral pretty quickly. And I think it's important to allow them to have that moment in time when they're feeling like that, and understand the difference between having a moment in time where they need to stop, take a breath and maybe grieve for a moment for the loss of something, versus going into a fit of depression and then not coming out the other end. So when someone comes and says, are you okay? And they say, no, I'm not, you need to ask questions. You need to find out, is it just a short-term problem, or is it that there is something that's, really going on and there's a chemical imbalance? And then from that, I think you make your decision based on that. But I think the number one thing is connection. If people have connection, if they have a tribe, if they have somebody, just one person that they can talk to, then that person can grab them and say, let's go for a walk, get them out in nature, get their body moving, and find out whether they do need, to go and see someone professional, or whether they just need a friend and a hug and a happy song and a dance. It can be as simple as that.
I agree. I think word usage is huge. 3 words that I've always believed in is us, we, together. Because when you're isolated, you're alone and it's you. And suddenly if someone walks up and says, oh, mate, together we will get through this, suddenly you've got an ally and you've got someone to bounce stuff off. And moving on to Elizabeth. So what things do you think we can do to improve, and what steps do you think we can do to change the way we deal with things?
Well, the first thing is communicate, right? One of the things that I know from various clients that I've worked with is the fact that we are so concerned about asking someone if they're okay, or finding out what's going on for someone, because we don't want to invade somebody else's space or invade somebody else's privacy. And so in today's society, I think it's really important for us to know that it's okay to be asking questions about how someone is, what's going on for them. And, you asked the question before about what would you do if someone said, no, I'm not okay. The first thing that I do is allow them to be not okay, and let them know that it's okay not to be okay. Because, we actually have this thing that we're all supposed to be, perfect. We've got this facade that we're all showing. And just to breathe into the fact that right now I'm feeling like crap. And it's been a while and it doesn't seem to be changing. So it's bringing in the individual and making sure that we all know that, yes, it's okay to ask a question, and yes, it's okay to say, no, I'm not okay, and to sit in that instead of, we go into this cycle of past and present and future, and so we've got all this stuff going on in our head. But if we can just sit for a second in that, okay, right now I'm not feeling okay, and be present to it, then we've got a little bit more space to go, well, what can I do to change that? And it's actually going and seeking some sort of help whether that's something like a practitioner that's, you know, the medical mainstream practitioner, or going to someone that's, you know, got some sort of alternative method, you know, like whether it's someone spiritual like me or an NLP practitioner or whatever it may be, something that you feel is going to resonate with you, and then move forward and take some action. But it has to be with the individual. You know, we all seem to think of society, and we all put this into a society thing, which actually tends to make us think the outside of ourselves instead of going, this is me. This is happening to me. Let's come back to, I'm not feeling okay. What can I do about it?
Yeah, so society's made up of individuals, so it's a matter of, as you said, coming back to each person. But with what both Elizabeth and Sam have said, in communicating, first thing you would do is make sure the relationships are right. You know, instead of waiting until it's, you know, asking somebody, are they okay? It's a matter of, first of all, looking at it and going, rightio, well, let's have a chat here with somebody else. Let's build the relationship with somebody. Have it so that you can talk to that person when something comes up. Think about it before. If everyone's healthy and feeling fine, now's the time to start to build stronger relationships with the people around you. So you've got a group of people that you know that you can call. I know I've got people like John. There's others in my life that I know I can have a chat with them straight away, and I know that they're going to come from that point of understanding, not of judgment. And so I can then be open in what I feel, and they also know they can be open with me. So then we don't have to worry about asking, are you okay? And then wondering, what the hell do we do next? We've already got the person ready to come up and tell us that they're not okay. And we're able to nip these things in the bud a lot earlier.
The first step there is acceptance, though, and most people don't realise that they're stuck because they haven't accepted what's happened. You know, you don't have to agree with it or feel good about it, but you need to accept it. And until you accept what's happened, you can't move through, you know, into forgiveness, gratitude, joy, or move from despair or wherever you are. It needs to be, you need to have that acceptance.
What does everyone think would be the one word or the two word answer they would give of what someone can do to put in place to improve the situation? You know, for wants and purposes, anything you might think would be the best thing. I'm going to give a name to start with. So Alan, we'll start with you.
Well, because my whole business is about building relationships. So relationships, work on the relationships when it comes together.
Awesome. Sam?
Movement, I'm going to say. Movement. I think that's the one thing that people can do that, no matter how you're feeling, is going to make you feel better than where you were before. Yeah.
And Elizabeth?
I would say my word would be connect. Just, you know, really connect with something, you know, someone that you can communicate with and let them know that how you're feeling, because that's something we're not doing these days. We're connecting with our phone, with our laptop, but we're not connecting with humans. So connect.
Hope, which happens to be my surname, Hope. The opposite of despair is hope. My family crest has it's a Scottish thing, and it has a broken cholesterol globe, so a broken globe, and it says that hope sits on the highest altar in heaven, because even when the world goes to crap, we've still got hope. And hope's important. The Bible teaches it, philosophy teaches it. Hope is what people need, especially in this trying time. We need hope that we're going to get through it.
Awesome. I'd like to thank everyone for such a great discussion today, and I hope you get to watch the future episodes. Remember, you can watch us through YouTube and all the social media outlets by subscribing or liking, and you'll easily be able to find new episodes. My name's Greg Van Borsum. Be awesome.
And please ask questions or leave comments and share with others who might benefit. Thanks again to our guests, Sam Boker, Elizabeth Eleanor, and John Hope.
And please thank my co-host, Mr. Alan Stevens.
And thanks for hosting, Greg Van Borsum.
And also a special last-minute thank you to the Republic Cafe at Long Beach. Please stop by and see them. They were going to support the show today. Unfortunately, we were locked down and couldn't make it. Let's make it there another time. Grab a coffee, catch up and say good day, and thank them for their help. See you all later.